On a fateful night, the specter of war cast its shadow over Vladimir Putin as Ukraine launched an audacious strike. Using cutting-edge kamikaze drones capable of traveling over 1,000 kilometers, they targeted the Kirishi facility, an industrial juggernaut that lies just a stone's throw from St Petersburg, Putin's birthplace. This facility is not just Russia's second-largest oil refinery, but also a critical pillar of the nation's energy backbone. As flames soared into the night sky, they consumed not only the refinery but also the illusion of Putin's unassailable leadership that he had constructed over 2 decades. With drone activity echoing ominously above Moscow, and the stench of smoke wafting through the air, the message became clear: the might of the Kremlin was not impenetrable. Putin, who had orchestrated assaults on cities far from his own, now watched in desperation as the industries of his childhood were reduced to ash. It became immediately evident that Russia's air defense systems, including advanced S-400s, stood virtually powerless against this new high-tech threat. This was a moment of profound humiliation for the Kremlin's leader. To grasp the extent of the damage inflicted by this strike, one must first appreciate the critical nature of the Kirishi facility. Located in the Leningrad Oblast, this refinery boasts a staggering annual processing capacity of 15 million tons of crude oil, representing 5.4% of the nation's entire refining output. Kirishi is more than just a massive complex, it's a crucial supplier of high-value products essential for modern warfare. The facility specializes in producing Euro 5 standard diesel, vital for the sophisticated engines of tanks and armored vehicles like the T-90M. It is also an essential source of jet fuel for the Russian Air Force's modern fighters, such as the Su-34 and Su-35. Most crucially, Kirishi manufactured specially formulated winter diesel that could withstand temperatures plummeting to -30 or 40 degrees Celsius, ensuring that military logistics could proceed uninterrupted, even during the harshest winters. The operation targeting Kirishi was not aimed at merely draining the fuel tanks of civilian vehicles, it held the potential to immobilize tanks on the battlefield, ground fighter jets, and freeze military convoys in transit amidst winter's grasp. The refinery, co-owned by Rosneft and Gazprom, underscores its political and strategic gravity, being under the direct thumb of the Kremlin. Thus, this was not merely an economic blow, it was a direct assault on the very heart of Putin's regime. As the inferno raged on, it signified not an isolated attack but the culmination of a calculated strategy aimed at crippling Russia's energy infrastructure. Analysts suggested that this onslaught could have pushed as much as 38% of Russia's refining capacities out of commission. Hitting multiple refineries and terminals across the country had already turned the Russian energy apparatus weak, draining its capacity and resilience. The loss of Kirishi would reverberate through the nation's energy supply, creating a domino effect that could plunge both military operations and civilian life into chaos. St. Petersburg, known for being a stronghold for the elite and a source of power for Putin, now found itself at the front line, as the flames carried with them the undeniable truth: the war has breached the walls of the Kremlin. As winter looms ominously close, one must ponder, what can Putin do to safeguard his urban bastions against Ukraine's relentless campaign? In a frantic bid for protection, Moscow will likely attempt to bolster air defenses around critical infrastructures. Yet, as the vulnerabilities of Russian air defenses become apparent, will this strategy hold, or will it merely expose new weaknesses? The echoes of drone strikes ring clear: the situation is about to escalate. How will Russia adapt? Can it shift fuel supplies across railroads and roads without becoming open targets? The puzzle of fuel demands and repairs becomes increasingly complex. As the tension mounts, the question remains: will Putin's stronghold withstand the coming storm, or will it crumble under the weight of its own ambitions and the relentless advance of enemy drones? In the vast expanse of Russia, one facility stands as a linchpin, providing a critical 1/120th share of fuel for a nation stretching across 11 time zones. The Kirishi refinery is not just any ordinary plant, it's a technological marvel essential to modern warfare and industrial strength. What precisely makes Kirishi such a vital target? Kirishi is a production powerhouse, generating high-value products crucial for the military machine. Not only does it produce average gasoline or fuel oil, but it specializes in high-quality Euro 5 diesel fuel. This specific fuel is vital for the precision engines of modern tanks and armored vehicles like the T-90M, which form the backbone of the Russian military. Additionally, it supplies a significant portion of the jet fuel necessary for the Russian Air Force's advanced fighter jets, including the Su-34 and Su-35. But there's more. Kirishi also produces specially formulated winter diesel that resists freezing even at -30 to 40 degrees Celsius. This is a game-changer for logistics and armored units battling harsh winter conditions. The attack on Kirishi was pivotal. Striking this facility was not merely about civilian fuel supply, it meant crippling frontline tanks, grounding jets mid-flight, and freezing military convoys in inhospitable weather. This was a direct hit on the core of Putin's regime, as Kirishi is primarily owned by Rosneft and Gazprom, giants under Kremlin control. The flames engulfing Kirishi signified more than just economic damage, it was an assault on the foundation of Putin's power. Analyses show that Ukraine's strategy has effectively disabled at least 17% of Russia's refining capacity, with some sources claiming the figure may reach 38%. Refineries and terminals, from Kirishi to Volgograd and beyond, have faced repeated attacks, causing production disruptions and delays in repairs. This relentless assault has left Russia's energy system drained, losing its reserves and ability to respond to crises effectively. With winter looming, will Putin's fuel reserves hold up, or is the Kremlin facing an overwhelming energy crisis that could spell disaster for both its military and civilian population? The stakes grow ever higher as the battle continues. The loss of a pivotal facility like Kirishi has triggered a crisis far worse than expected, creating a ripple effect that threatens both military operations and the daily lives of civilians across Russia. St. Petersburg, a vital hub for the elite who bolster Putin's power, is now a battlefield. This assault revealed to its residents that the war is no longer just a distant reality showcased on screens, it has breached their doorstep. The flames that consumed the Kirishi refinery have stripped away the Kremlin's illusions, exposing the fallacy that Russia remains untouched by the conflict. With the war now knocking at Putin's door, a profound question arises: how can he shield Moscow and other critical cities from a relentless Ukraine? The initial response will be a frantic scramble to reinforce air defenses around essential infrastructure, fervently seeking to deter further assaults on energy sites. Yet, this is a daunting task for Russian air defense systems already battered on the Ukrainian front. As systems are deteriorated to the point of being ineffective, the risk of exposing frontline troops increases, leaving them vulnerable to Ukrainian counterattacks. Ukraine remains undeterred, shifting its focus to striking another set of targets. Facilities producing crucial jet fuel and winter-grade diesel, stockpiles in major cities like Moscow and St. Petersburg, and remaining fuel terminals on the Black Sea are now on its radar. The urgency is evident: to incapacitate Russia's energy infrastructure entirely, leaving both the military and civilians stranded without fuel. The ongoing tension is palpable, reminiscent of a coiled spring ready to snap. With each assault, the infrastructure becomes increasingly fragile, and the waiting game intensifies. As winter approaches, the stakes escalate: how long can Russia sustain this energy deficit before the effects become catastrophic? This fuel crisis isn't just a logistical hurdle, it's the stark reality of how the facade of Russian self-sufficiency is starting to crack under pressure. The once mighty illusion of an impenetrable fortress is disintegrating before our eyes. What unfolds next is a dangerous game of survival, with discontent growing ever closer to the surface. Will Putin's desperate measures prove to be a double-edged sword? As the plot thickens, an unexpected twist emerges. Can Russia's strained alliances provide the lifeline it desperately needs, or will they pull further away, leaving Putin to face the repercussions alone? In the Kremlin's dimly lit room, a glimmer of hope flickered fleetingly. The name Minsk emerged, a beacon amid despair. This capital was not just a loyal ally, it housed two massive oil refineries from the Soviet era, relics of a past that connected Russia and Belarus. On the surface, it all seemed straightforward. Moscow could send the crude oil it could not refine directly to its neighbor, who would then process this oil to fulfill Russia's pressing need for diesel and gasoline. Yet, this seemingly simple plan collided with the harsh reality of today's geopolitical landscape. Those urgent calls from Moscow to Minsk had changed. They no longer resonated like commands from an older brother to a younger sibling. Instead, they reflected a desperate plea for assistance from an increasingly cornered power to another one, precariously balancing on the edge. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko recognized the panic in those words as a moment that could either save his political future or spell his doom. Caught in a precarious position, the Minsk regime faced its own set of challenges. On one hand, their refineries could be struck by Ukrainian drones, jeopardizing fuel security. On the other hand, the closure of the Polish border left Belarus economically isolated, pushing Lukashenko into clandestine negotiations with Western powers as he sought an end to sanctions in return for releasing political prisoners. For Russia to ask Belarus to fully address its fuel crisis would be tantamount to political suicide for Lukashenko. This left Belarus wary of transforming its own refineries into prime targets for Ukrainian attacks, risking further sanctions that would disrupt its fragile diplomacy with the West. Thus, any assistance from Minsk would be muddled and ambiguous, a hesitant maybe. While there might be some support for the brotherly Russian people, it would be riddled with excuses surrounding technical limitations and domestic market concerns. The substantial flow of fuel that Moscow anticipated might just remain a wishful thought. Any potential aid would be akin to applying a mere bandage to a grievous injury, not a tourniquet capable of halting the severe loss. This unsettling reality painfully highlighted to Putin that even his most steadfast ally was not ready to jump into the fire for him at the expense of their own sinking ship. As winter loomed on the horizon, the stakes grew ever higher. How long could Russia hold its ground before the chill of paralysis set in? Would the flames of the coming crisis be doused, or would they ignite an even greater conflagration? As we delve deeper into the unfolding crisis, it becomes increasingly clear how intricately woven and potent Ukraine's strategy against Russia's energy resources truly is. This approach isn't simply about dismantling Russia's capacity to produce fuel. Instead, it's a calculated maneuver to exacerbate its political vulnerability, making the Kremlin appear frail, dependent, and untrustworthy even to its own supposed allies. At this critical juncture, not even the might of nuclear arsenals or the loudest propaganda can conceal the stark reality of empty fuel reserves. Imagine the chilling silence echoing through Russia's corridors of power as leaders grapple with this stark truth. What will happen when the tanks are stationary and the jets remain grounded? How will the Kremlin respond as winter descends and fuel shortages tighten their grip? The walls are closing in, and time is running out. As Ukraine maintains its relentless pressure, the Kremlin is forced into a precarious position, trying to reassure its allies while scrambling to secure resources. This predicament is not just about fuel, it's about power dynamics, the very essence of sovereignty, and the unraveling of Russia's facade of invulnerability. With every passing day, the sense of urgency grows. A nation built on the illusion of strength finds itself teetering on the brink. And in this complex game of chess, will the Kremlin finally see that even a superpower can bleed profusely when its heart, the energy infrastructure, is under siege? The coming months are poised to reveal just how fragile this empire has truly become. Russia is scrambling to counteract Ukraine's relentless attacks. Their defenses are stretched thin after those drone strikes. Now, Ukraine is ramping up the pressure, targeting more refineries for top-grade jet fuel and winter diesel, fuel depots in big cities like Moscow and St Petersburg, and the last terminals on the Black Sea coast. What if I told you, the roar of flames isn't just about blotting out the sun, but about freezing an empire in its tracks? Imagine the hum of engines sputtering, the bitter snap of -30 biting skin, as tanks grind to a halt, and jets tumble from the skies without a drop to burn. Ukraine's plan is crystal clear: to choke Russia's energy veins completely, stranding Putin's military machine, igniting chaos on battlefields and back home. So, how does Russia fight back? Their desperate move is to ramp up fuel flows by rail and road, shunting supplies across the vast land. But here comes the bitter sting, literally. Oh, the whistle of incoming strikes, the boom of explosions shattering tracks, as partisan saboteurs add their fierce blows. Russia glimpses for the first time how brittle the whole barrel-based system truly is. As frost draws near, how long will this crimson warning blare? It hinges not just on missile shields, but on honest repair timelines, and the savvy administration guiding it. A mighty power must craft a strategy that shields its own heart. Moscow. Else, a silent freeze creeps in, before the thunder of frontline guns. This freeze? It's the agonizing limbo they call backlog. The perpetual mantra. Tomorrow arrives. And that mantra delivers the cruelest strike, eroding the patience of weary civilians back home. Winter looms, a pivotal shift for Russia. Fuel hunger spikes, amplifying every blow to Ukraine's energy web. The Kremlin, in frantic scramble, claws to rebuild supplies with hasty fixes. Yet, this is far beyond mere logistics. It's the brutal expose of a superpower's shattered illusion of standing alone, ripped apart by a direct hit to its core industry. Ukraine's, or perhaps homegrown partisan energy blockade spirals to a perilous brink, probing not just refining might, but alliances with steadfast partners.
At the Kremlin's fraught war council, one city shines as the prime lifeline. Minsk.
Belarus. Russia's truest ally in the Union state, cradles two mammoth refineries, relics of Soviet days, still churning strong. The scheme seems uncomplicated on paper. Russia pumps raw oil it can't handle toward Belarus, and Belarus refines it, fueling Russia's dire diesel and gasoline shortfall. But reality crashes down, a geopolitical glacier forged in recent upheaval. Those hasty, panicked calls from Moscow to Minsk, no longer a big brother barking orders to a little one. This is a trapped giant's pleading wail, to another edging the abyss. And Lukashenko eyes it, as a bold chip in his survival game. The Minsk regime twists in a vicious vice. One side, their own plants within drone range, their own fuel teetering on fragility. The other, economically strangled by a sealed Polish border. Lukashenko weaves covert deals with the West, bartering prisoner releases for sanction relief, to stave off his regime's fall. For Russia to lean in wholly, solving the fuel calamity, it spells doom for him. Belarusian refineries become prime Ukrainian targets, disrupting that precarious Western waltz, inviting harsher condemnations. So, Minsk hedges, coy and elusive, balancing between yes and no. Sure, they'll aid the fraternal Russian folk, but with alibis like tech limits, slated upkeep, and home demands. The hope for torrent of fuel? It might dribble, a meager patch on the gash, not the clamp to staunch the lifeblood flow. This lays bare to Putin that even his staunchest ally hesitates to leap into flames when their own raft leaks. Twisting irony, their brotherhood crumbles, as Ukraine's layered assault proves its edge, unraveling Putin's iron grip. But wait, what if the crisis uncovers Russia's secret lifeline isn't dependable, forcing isolation in the dead of winter? Control 138, is that the screech of defeated systems echoing through the night, or the scent of scorched myth filling the air? War bangs on Vladimir Putin's threshold. October 4th's drone assault by Ukraine shatters records. Advanced kamikaze drones stretch over 1,000 kilometers, zeroing on Kirishi refinery. Russia's second-largest, most advanced facility, just outside St Petersburg. Putin's childhood haven. That night, roaring flames engulf the heavens, incinerating not just oil beats, but Putin's myth of an unbreachable citadel. Forged across 25 years. Drones buzzing Moscow's skies, gas lines threading the nation, yet Kirishi's blaze, in Putin's own nest, validates the West's claim, the ruler hunted within his walls. Putin ships carnage to Ukrainian towns, distant thousands of kilometers, yet gazes powerless as his boyhood city's industry crumbles to embers. It exposes Russian defenses, loopholes gaping wide, despite S-400 and Panzer systems circling St. Petersburg. Putin endures twin defeats, strategic and symbolic. To grasp how this raid ignites Russia's fuel turmoil, consider Kirishi's whirl. Nestled in Leningrad Oblast, 150 kilometers from St. Petersburg, a colossal refinery, processing 15 million tons of crude yearly. It feeds 5.4% of Russia's total refining, largest in the central district, fueling a nation across 11 time zones. But what elevates Kirishi to prey? Not mere bulk, but premium outputs crucial for modern war and peace. Not standard gasoline or diesel, but gems for Putin's arsenal. Per facility data. Kirishi tops high-grade Euro 5 diesel, powering precise engines of tanks like T-90M, basestones of armored forces. Vital too, jet fuel for air fighters like Su-34 and Su-35. And crucially, specialized winter diesel, defying minus 30 to 40 degrees, letting logistics trucks and armored units charge through Siberian blizzards. Targeting Kirishi? It stars civilian pumps, halts frontline tanks, strands jets mid-sky, embalms convoys in ice tombs. Ownership amplifies the blow. Jointly held by Rosneft and Gazprom, direct Kremlin oligarch dominion. This? Not mere economic raid, a dagger into regime veins. Kirishi's inferno fits a pattern, capstone of Ukraine's strangulation. Independent probes reveal Ukraine's campaign cripples 17% of Russia's refining, some say 38. Sites from Kirishi to Volgograd. Syzran to Tuapse, pummeled relentlessly, output wrecked, fixes stalled. Russia's energy network anemic, depleted reserves, adaptability crippled, crisis vulnerable. Kirishi's fall? A cascade multiplier. Fuel crunch morphs catastrophic, crippling troops and populace alike. Context matters. St. Petersburg pulses as elite stronghold. Putin's power and wealth cradle. The strike shatters elite illusions, or no TV specter, but doorstep menace.
Kremlin's mantra: Operation Untouched Lives, gutted by backyard blazes. It declares war home to Putin's turf.
St Petersburg frontline, his fortress breached.
So, how does Putin safeguard Moscow and hubs against Ukraine's unprecedented barrage?
Moscow scrambles, amassing defenses around vital sites, warding inland strikes. But ruthless toil for overtaxed systems, bloodied on Ukrainian lines. Defenders hail from front to secure refineries, exposing flanks, gifting Ukraine fresh exploits.
Ukraine presses on.
Targets? Other jet fuel and winter diesel producers, metro depots in Moscow and St. Petersburg.
Black Sea terminals. Aim: full energy paralysis, grounding Putin's machine, total battlefront and home ruin.
What sharp reversal lurks if Russia's frantic defenses birth their own doom, drawing fire to vulnerable hearts? Russia leans to a second gambit, boosting rail and road shipments.
Yet, sparking fresh prey for Ukraine's long-range launches, partisan onslaughts. Russia awakens to fragility, a barrel empire's brittleness.
Winter's bite draws close, alert span harks to shield prowess, feasible rebuild paths, transparent governance.
Behemoth must strategize, not endangering core. Moscow. Lest hushed standstill precedes gunfire.
This standstill.
Cueing limbo, eternal vow, tomorrow dawns. That vow, fiercest assault, fraying rear morale.
Winter seasons pivot for Russia.
Spiraling fuel thirst heightens blast ripples on Ukraine's grid. Kremlin frenzy seeks supply rebuild via new steps.
But beyond chains, vivid shatter of superpower self-reliance myth, cleaved by homeland smack. Ukraine's or internal partisan blockade ascends lethal stage, taxing output in packs.
Kremlin's summit fixates single salve. Minsk.
Belarus.
Union's staunchest ally, harbors two Soviet-era giants, operational refineries.
Blueprint clear.
Russia routes unrefined crude to Belarus. Belarus processes for diesel-gasoline rush. But blueprint smashes geopolitical iceberg's face.
Swollen months shift tides.
Moscow's urgent dispatches to Minsk shift, elder kin directives gone.
Desperate appeals from besieged colossus to wobbly pier.
Lukashenko views gamble for regime bailout. Minsk's regime squeezed doubly.
Refineries drone vulnerable, fuel precarious.
Economically choked by Polish seal. Lukashenko courts West covertly, prisoner swaps for sanctionees, regime salvation.
Russia's wholesale intervention to end crisis?
Lukashenko's poison. Refineries prime targets, derailing Western tango, harsher penalties. Minsk equivocates, makeshift yes-no.
Aid Russians yes, citing tech hurdles, upkeep needs, local priorities.
Expected flood? Mere trickle, bandage not tourniquet. Painfully unveils, allies abandon when own boats sink. Ukraine's intricate offensive shines anew, destabilizing Putin's grip. The twist? Push comes to shove. Russia's brotherly savior balks, plunging empire deeper into icy solitude. What alliances shatter next in Frost's grip? The stakes have been raised in an ongoing conflict as Ukraine identifies new opportunities to strike.
The Ukrainian strategy focuses on targeting critical energy infrastructure. Other facilities that produce premium jet fuel, winter-grade diesel, and storage depots in key cities like Moscow and St. Petersburg are now on Ukraine's radar. This approach aims to cripple Russia's fuel supply and capability, leading to chaos both at the front lines and back home. Factory operations that once fueled Russia's war machine are under siege. In response, the Kremlin considers ramping up oil shipments across railways and roads. But this solution is fraught with peril. It opens even more vulnerabilities to Ukraine's long-range missiles, further endangering the very foundation of Russia's energy sector. For the first time, the true fragility of their massive oil infrastructure is becoming painfully clear. As winter looms, uncertainty grows. How long can Russia maintain its high alert status? The answer lies not only in their defense systems but also in how efficiently they manage repairs and public sentiment. The energy giant must strategize to avert a financial collapse. Without smart planning, a slow but catastrophic paralysis may settle in, preceding any audible alarm of conflict. This state of waiting, this mantra of tomorrow will come, is the real enemy, gnawing at the morale of the Russian populace. The winter months could decide Russia's fate, as demand for fuel surges. Any further attacks on their energy capabilities will likely compound their suffering. In a state of panic, the Kremlin scrambles to restore fuel supplies, recognizing they face not merely a logistical challenge, but a deep and damaging revelation. An illusion of self-sufficiency has been shattered. At the center of this crisis, a singular solution emerges: Minsk. This city, a loyal ally nestled within the Union state, holds two significant oil refineries from the Soviet era. On the surface, the fix appears straightforward. Russia could transport their excess crude oil to Belarus, who could refine it to satisfy Russia's urgent appetite for diesel and gasoline. But, this well-intentioned plan soon encounters a formidable geopolitical reality. Those frantic initial calls from Moscow are no longer expressions of authority, they carry the tone of desperation from a beleaguered power seeking assistance from another that is also perched on the brink. The leader of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, sees this scenario as both a challenge and a chance, a high-stakes gamble for survival amid tightening noose, not just around Russia but around his regime as well. Caught in a dual crisis, Belarus is beset by threats of its own. Its oil facilities are within reach of Ukrainian drones, and its fuel security hangs by a thread. Furthermore, with the Polish border shuttered, Lukashenko is engaging in secret negotiations with Western powers to bolster his position. To commit fully to aiding Russia could jeopardize his regime amidst these precarious waters. Hence, the response from Minsk will be shrouded in ambiguity. They may imply support but will present excuses rooted in technical limitations and local priorities. Consequently, the tide of fuel flow Moscow desperately seeks could come up dry, offering little more than a band-aid to stop a profuse bleed rather than a strong tourniquet to stem the crisis. This stark reality underscores the profound lesson facing Putin: even those long seen as allies will not risk their lives for him when they themselves are sinking. As the tension grows, it becomes increasingly obvious just how layered and sophisticated Ukraine's strategy targeting Russia's energy infrastructure has become. This chapter has only just begun. What twists will unfold in the months ahead?